the martial art itself is not based on techniques. It's based on the cultivation. This is one of our profound things. It's based on the cultivation of human instinct. And what do I mean by that before we get into the training? If you just look at any YouTube video or even UFC video of a human being under attack and in defense, you know, people cover up and they use like a fetal position and, you know, the response factor and then a defensive factor. When you get punched in the face, an instinct is not to do, you know, these kind of things. It's not instinctive. So when we were kids, we had these different experiences when you're getting hit and finding these instinctive reactions, and then ultimately thinking, well, that's our automated reaction. Don't think about any of that. You just do it irregardless. There is no thought process. How are we able to take this instinctive defense methodology and turn it into like a defense in attack methodology? In the early days, we didn't even know. In the latter years, we've kind of found that, which we're going to touch on a little bit. Everyone in the martial art world is looking for that kind of one technique fits all, and we believe over the years we've come close. Is just touch on a little bit of the functionality and the reality that we found many, many years ago, like 30 years ago, in the pubs, clubs and discos, and it was, a reflection of just, a brutal reality of fighting on disco floors and in crowded areas, in corridors, when there's 3, 4 and 5 people all kicking off at the same time. And, does a classic kind of boxing stance work when you're fighting 3 and 4 people? In truth, no. Does a classic kind of karate and Wing Chun kind of thing work when there's 8 fists flying around everywhere? Kind of truthfully, no, you struggle. And again, you can see on YouTube videos, people having a confrontation, getting blindsided. And for me personally, it's quite frustrating all these years on that people are still really locked into, a one dimension of it. So if we get punched in the temples, what's going to happen to you? Big punch in the temple, you're going to probably go down. You get punched in the jaw, you're going to go down. You get punched in the throat really good, you're probably going to go down. And one of the worst things is getting hit in the back of the head. It's like you see silver stars and you're just gone. But I want to fight you. But I've got to try and protect all these things. And I'm on a disco floor and there's fists flying everywhere. So what can we do? So we're going to take a little break here. I'm going to bring Miguel in and we're going to show and explain what we call the 4-man box. This is a little bit of the training methodology on the functional and practical side of the things. And a question when I was a young kid that I first asked myself, when I'm stood in front of somebody in the street and, for example, all the skills, bobbing and weaving and run away. Yeah, well, what if you can't run away and I just have to stand still and receive a full attack? Is it possible, or was it possible? And back 25, 30 years ago, again, we didn't even know. Well, this is kind of how we train this one specific instinctive shape, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. But watch carefully as Miguel just hits me in the head. Okay, the obvious thing is don't block it and get knocked out. Kind of the second process is a bit like a boxer, but when it's a bare fist, you literally smash your own face, and it's great when you've got a big padded glove, but when it's a bare fist in the street, even this is not so good. And this instinctive shape of covering the head is what we cultivated. So Miguel's going to work 3 hits, like a low power, a middle power, and a full power. And you just watch me. Okay, low power. Okay, middle power. Okay, full power. And I'm going to let him do another 4 full power. Full power for 4. Okay, what's the concept in that? As a young man, fighting in the discos, can you stand your ground against a bare fist and have that confidence say, you throw the punch because I'm going nowhere. And yeah, I might get a bruise on my arm in the real world, but I don't really care. And once, for example, really slow, once I've received the hit, the ability for me to enter is actually really quite easy. But that's with one person in front of me. Now let's go to the disco floor. Miguel was hitting me there, so one hit. That's okay, so I can deal with a hit and maybe a counter. But what about the guy at the side that's hitting me at the same time as I'm dealing with this guy here? It's possible. What about if he's on this side? We call this like the wingman. What about if I'm still dealing with this guy here and there's a guy on the blind side, on the wing side, and I'm dealing with this and hitting? It's possible. What if he's at the back, the worst place ever? Now, obviously the reality is if I can't see a thing and it's a hit, we know the reality. But there is one simple thing that I have learned across the years. Getting hit on the head with no protection is one thing. Getting hit in the head with protection is a different thing. And Miguel, again, he's going to do like 3 hits, a little bit slow, a little bit harder, and a little bit harder, just to show the impact of the back, okay? So it's like a little bit slow, okay, a little bit harder, and a little bit harder. In the end, it's about why do you do that and what's it really about? No, it's from you being hit simultaneous by 3 or 4 people on the disco floor, and is it humanly possible? Yes, it is, but you need to understand this framework, because trying to do these things, block things and bob and weave things, in the truth, in the disco, it's impossible. So, back to this shape. Let's just break this thing down for you so you can understand a little bit more. An instinctive reaction from the human that you can see on 1,000 million videos on YouTube is, this covering up when people get hit. This became what we now call like the thinking man, and it represented, like the thinking, the mind, and the man, the body. So like mind and body, which is is a martial art philosophy. But it really was about us like kind of thinking and studying the opponent whilst under attack, so we can turn the defense into attack. Now, with this simple shape, we have a triangle, which you can see. And little by little, the hands maybe travel and brace on the wrist and tighten up. And within this simple shape, you protect both temples, both knockout points on your chin, both the knockout points on the veins in your neck, and a knockout point on the 2 base pieces of the back of the neck. This enabled us to start surviving a proper, true onslaught of like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fists flying at once. And we found this as young kids, and it was possible. Is it easy? Of course it's not easy. And this opened up a whole new spectrum of potentials, because instead of trying to find an answer for a specific thing, which in the end you just need a million techniques, we actually started to find that this one thing was not range dependent. And what do I mean by that? People sometimes look at this and say, yeah, but it's a close quarter thing because you're close. No, it can operate in all ranges. Long distance, middle distance, short distance, kicking, knees, punches, elbows, grappling, people grab you to throw you, for jiu-jitsu, for judo, on the ground. And this is the part we're going to take a little look at right now. Let's go back to our instinctive shape. I'm stressed, I'm frightened, I'm panicking, and he throws a kick at me. I use the same shape to destroy the foot. Now, I've done this several times, and when people kick and the foot's loose, I can't really do it, but when you attack it with, ballistic power, just snaps the foot just is broken. The same with the punches. We've kind of got to do it slowish because he's got no protection on, but if Miguel throws a jab and you attack the jab full power, hand versus an elbow, there's only one winner, and it's the elbow. What if he throws a boxer's cross, a really good right hand? It's like, I don't really care. What if it's a really good tight hook on the side of the head? I don't really care. What if it's like a big bolo boxer's punch? I don't really care. What if it's the uppercut? It doesn't really matter. What if it's a knee? It don't really matter. What if it's a really cool elbow? It doesn't really matter. I've got one thing will take me from long distance to that really awful thing in a real fight of being punched in the face because everybody headhunts, to slightly more sophisticated weapons like knees from Muay Thai and elbows, and they're famous for it. But is it possible to attack that with just a simple thing? Yes, it is. And all these years on, All these years on, very few people actually really understand this still. They're still searching for techniques. And why? Because they've never really been in there. And just our lives from the past have actually genuinely been, you know, in the mix on the dance floors and getting hit from everywhere and you're trying to understand how to move around and, you know, tag and hit people with one simple thing, you know, one nucleus, then obviously the weapons come off the nucleus. But is it range dependent? No, it can operate in any range and any scenario that you can possibly think of.